Hi everyone and welcome to Murphy's Law Garage. Today we put together this jigsaw puzzle that is a Mustang Darkhorse performance handling pack style spoiler with a gurney flap from eBay, all of the China, on my S650 Mustang. Dang it. All right, so I'm going to show you the listing right here and also drop it down below so that you can try and get yourself one. These things have proven to be very, very difficult to find in stock. There's also a satin black version of this. The gloss black just happened to have popped up. It's like $265, or the satin version is $185. So this one popped up and I purchased it. There are no instructions that I can find on how to put this together, but it seems pretty obvious. So the very first bit I want to put on here is the center support column, and that goes on right here like this, and it's held on with a pair of these screws right here. I don't know what these rubber stops are for yet. I'm imagining maybe there's some sort of alignment dowels. We'll find out because, again, no instructions. One thing I want to point out while I'm assembling this is I'm going to be looking for opportunities for water sealing. Now imagine this spoiler obviously is going to be right side up. Water could get into that seam, run through that screw hole, and come out of this sealing surface to get to this bolt here, which could result in a leak. More than likely not. It'd be a hell of a path to take, but I don't like leaks. So one of the things I'm going to do when I put this on here is I'm going to put grease where these two touch each other, some heavy axle grease where the two touch each other, as well as on the head of the bolt to ensure that whenever it clamps down that there is a perfectly sealed surface. All right, so you can see here that I've got just a little bit of grease on both sides where they're going to touch each other. That's almost acting like silicone, but it doesn't harden up, which means you can just wipe it off if you're taking it apart or need to work on something, as well as a little bit of grease on the screw. I've got a nice long screwdriver here. I'm going to go ahead and get this first one in and then run the others in after. All right, so as it is normally with things that are plastic and you're putting multiple screws in on a piece like this, make sure to put these 4 screws in loosely as you go. Like for this one, I needed to squeeze this column a little bit once these screws were in to get it to line on the other side. Then once you've got all 4 screws in, you can go ahead and tighten it up. Next, I'm going to move on to putting these side stanchions on here. You can see the shape of it kind of follows the shape of the spoiler here, and it slips right onto the side and is held on by 1, 2, 3 screws. All right, so I wanted to mention there's no need for grease on these. There is no pathway for water into the car through these connections, and this is able to release water if water does get behind it. The next thing we're going to want to do is put this little blanking panel right here that is going to block visibility of those screws attaching these pieces from the underneath. And that is going to be held on with one of these large format pieces of 3M tape. Now you might ask yourself, why is it built this way? Why is it a Lego set? Why is it in so many pieces? Well, AMP wanted this to be cheaper to ship, and had this have been put fully together, the box would have to be much larger. There's the box there. So the box would have probably had to been triple the thickness, which means coming from China it would have been much more expensive, but at least they hide these really well. I will say, AMP, this is not an appropriate thing to put on the back of the spoiler. This is going to be more visible than some would believe. You're not APR, you know what I mean? You really shouldn't have your logo so cleanly visible, what is going to be on the rear of the car. I wouldn't mind the AMP if it didn't have this random gibberish down here on the spoiler, so do better. I'm going to end up repainting the spoiler to match the color of the car eventually. Whenever I do that, I'm going to sand through this and clean it up whenever I paint it Atlas blue. All right, so once you've got the blanking plate on, make sure you clean those surfaces up real well with alcohol and get some good pressure on it. You might would consider the screws that go into this sideward stanchion that you put some blue Loctite on them, because they will be inaccessible without great trouble after. Next, we're going to put this on right here, which is where it connects to the car. So there's a pair of studs here that need to line up, and it sits in like this. 3 screws, 1, 2, 3, hold it on. And same as the other piece here, there is no water intrusion points. What you see here is going to be dealt with by some foam seals. So let me get this put on. All right, so next to these block off plates that hide these screws, they go on like this. It is held on by this piece of tape. It's very important. In this case, mine is red side up with that screw hole down, or not a screw hole. It goes right here, and it leaves this hole in the extrusion exposed, as well as on the bottom of this spoiler block off plate. I have a feeling that it's possible that these bumpers are going to end up going into this, and it's supposed to support the spoiler where it might touch the body of the car. We'll find out, because again, no instructions. So get these cleaned up, and I'm going to get that block off plate put on. Boom, and just like that, this side is done. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that process on this side. You don't need to watch that. Be right back. All right, other side is complete here. The second to last thing we need to do is to get these foam seals put on all of the pedestals, and that keeps water from getting into the car. These are sticky on the back, so test it a few times, make sure you're comfortable with placing it, clean this up real well, and then stick them on there. All right, boom, just like that, we've got the foam pads here on the spoiler. Now, I am fairly certain that those bump stops go here, though I'm going to wait to put them on until I can see it sitting on the car and make sure that that's what needs to go here. So I believe this is going to end up touching the other panel of the body and needs some extra support. Let me flip this over this way, and we're going to get the gurney flap put on. All right, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4 screws that hold the gurney flap on. You're here to see the smoked piece of plexi. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. And those 4 black screws belong in that place. It's going to be difficult to do on camera, so I'm going to go ahead and get these in without damaging this piece of acrylic. It is pretty fragile because of that thin center section. And boom, there it is. Gurney flap is on. Now I wanted to mention, do use lots of blue Loctite on the 4 screws that hold these on, because you cannot tighten this down a super bunch or you're going to crack the acrylic. Acrylic breaks pretty easily if you squeeze on it or put a pressure point on it, so lots of blue Loctite to hold this on. Now, let's go get the spoiler module off of the car so we can get this installed. All right, so now we're at the car. First thing I'm going to do is remove these guys right here. These are the bump stops for the trunk. You can adjust how deep the trunk sits here, and these just spin out. And the reason why we need to get these out is that we need to pop the trunk liner off to get to the spoiler module bolts that are back here. So the S650 somewhat uniquely has a spoiler module. You see that line right there across the back? This entire part of the car has to come off, so then you can gain access to the spoiler that's here. So from my understanding, as long as the car has a spoiler, the correct mounting holes are there. If you have a spoiler delete, you do not have those. So I've got these 2 removed. This just pops off. I'm gonna pop that off. And then all of these clips, I'm gonna remove, and I'm gonna shimmy this down, and I'll show you where the bolts are. All right, next you're gonna need to remove this plug. See, there's a bolt there. And this plug, there's a bolt there as well. And you're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bolts to remove. I lied. 10, 11. All right, once you've got all of those removed, by the way, the nuts and bolts were 10 millimeter, and these 2 screws that go right here on either side, they are 7 millimeter. There's double-sided tape that acts like a seal to keep water from getting in here that attaches these 2 to each other. So you're gonna, hopefully it's warm outside, that helps a lot. If not, maybe park the car in the sun You're going to pull the spoiler module away from the car, and there are studs in there here that come through that are going to want to slide out. But you're going to have to pull the spoiler module this way first to disengage this tape, and then up. It won't just fall off, I promise, because the studs are in here, but be careful. Use a second set of hands if you need to. Let's get this off and get it inside. All right, so now the whole spoiler module is in my hand. Let me slip this in here carefully. One thing I wanted to mention, forgot to say, is that you're gonna have to disconnect the reverse camera harness, which has got 2 tree clips in it here. Luckily, they're not in there super tight. You can just pull up and they pull out. And then there's one connector in there that you're gonna push down right here and slide off for the camera. Before this goes back on, I'm definitely gonna take a minute to clean up this area on the car right here because it's awfully filthy. But let's get this inside in the building and get the thumbnail spoiler removed and the Darkhorse spoiler on. All right, so next we need to get this inside support structure out of our way so we can get to the mounting locations here in the center for the spoiler. There are a bunch of T15 screws here that hold this center black plastic bit into the spoiler module. So I'm gonna get all of these screws removed. There's quite a few of them, and then get this pulled out. All right, once you've got all of the screws out, the backing plate for the camera module, carefully slip the camera module out. You're gonna be able to then pop out the entire center cartridge here, and we'll set that to the back. Next, now we have access to all of the hardware that holds down the thumbnail spoiler, and by that I mean no hardware. It looks like it might just be stuck on there with tape and push pins. So let me get these push pins pushed back, and this is still nice and warm from the sun, and I'm going to very carefully peel this away from the spoiler module. Ooh, let me tell you, that was painful. It's like for all of the broke people who chose to get the thumbnail spoiler, Ford was like, we're going to put as much tape as we possibly can, not because we're trying to keep stuff from getting in here, because it obviously did, so that it would be wildly painful to remove the thumbnail spoiler. I ended up taking a pair of rags once I got the corner started and stuffing the rags under, and then using a very nice sharp razor blade to slice the tape. I don't think I hit the module anywhere. We're about to find out when I get all of this goo off, but you have to be very careful. I ran the razor blade up against the old spoiler, knowing it wouldn't be an issue if it had a scratch on the bottom, but the Darkhorse spoiler is only going to touch here and here, so if there's any scratches here, they'd be seen. I'm going to spend a copious amount of time cleaning this and then removing this film, and probably go ahead and do ceramic coat on what of this I couldn't get to before beginning attaching the Darkhorse spoiler. I'm sorry, don't mind the obtuse sound of rain on my steel building. I've been doing a lot of this for quite a while now. I tested the paint, and the paint is very soft. Surprise, surprise. So I would not rub an eraser wheel on this paint to remove this adhesive. What I've done is I've put some Goo Gone on there, just spread some across the surface, and I've warmed it, and I'm coming back with my finger and just rolling it up. The Goo Gone isn't really eating through it well. It's some really good tape, but it is acting like a lubricant and helping break down the adhesive on the backside. A lubricant because it's oily and you're rubbing your finger on the paint. You want to take the risk of putting a bunch of swirls in it, so just be prepared to be here for a while doing this. I'm actually surprised at how bad the paint is under the wedge spoiler. You know what? I say that, I'm not surprised. There's actually some damage in the paint, but they left it. This passed QC because they knew a thumb spoiler was going to go over that. I'm sure hoping the new pedestal covers that. That's a crock of shit, Ford. But look at the damage the tape caused to the paint. I don't have a bunch of cutting materials here for buffing, but I'm gonna see what I've got and see if I can cut down on this marking that's on the paint. You can feel the roughness in the surface right here too. Jeez. Oh man. a spoiler installation project turns into buff as much of the old spoiler's tape damage out of your spoiler module. I don't have a random orbital in the shop right now, but I did have just a random variable speed polisher. I put chamois cloth on, which it gives a pretty hard cut. Plus I had some Meguiar's mirror glaze laying around, and very carefully polished on this until, well, you can see it is much better. There's still freckles in the paint from where it would have been, you know, that way from the factory, and they covered it up with a spoiler, but other than that, I've got all of the tape damage out of it. So let me get the spoiler up here and then try to get this bolted on. All right, well, there's your answer. If you have the thumbnail spoiler, none of the included hardware will work for this. They do have some double-sided tape, foreseeably, so that you can just tape these two together. I'm guessing maybe they expect you to actually put this on a Darkhorse, or is the TrackPack's rear spoiler module different? I don't know. Something goofy is different between that and the thumbnail spoiler. Like, this hole is so big you can't possibly grab it to squeeze it down. The stud they have right here stands proud of the spoiler, so you can't actually tighten down on it. These two studs are not long enough to reach through, and I have to imagine that would have looked the same. So why does it not reach? Same thing, studs too tall here, and studs too tall, and this hole's too big. I'm gonna try to figure out a washer, big fender washer situation here. Maybe I can stack some larger washers here that allows the screw to grab and pull down. Same thing here with these tall studs. I'm gonna have to take the foam off of the Darkhorse eBay spoiler so that I can use double-sided tape, and maybe when I do that, these nuts will reach. Who knows? Same thing on this side. So give me some time to figure this out, and I'll bring you back. All right, so I've stared at the design of this for a minute. And you can see here that the thumbnail spoiler also had this insert here for this round section to drop in. On the car, a bolt goes through the trunk all the way and then catches this this nutsert. On the aftermarket spoiler, they've got it turned the other way around, where you would put a nut on it. I don't know if that's going to work out. We're going to have to wait to see once it's on the car. I was able to get these two nuts here to start only after taking that other foam off. Much like right here, there's pins in the thumb spoiler that align with a slotted hole right here, which also aligns here. I don't think they intend for you to do anything with these, and even if you wanted to, it would get in the way in the body of the car. Same story goes over here. It's the same thing. You've got a pin in the center here, a pin in the center here, and then these two were floating and could attach to these holes, these two clips. So I think what I'm going to have to do, and I'm not super happy about it, is I'm just going to go ahead and 3M tape these two together with these two holding, because that's all I've got right here, and then stick it on the car and see if I can squeeze it down. Okay, well, 3M tape is probably enough for the normal person. This car is going to go the legal speed limit often, a lot, and go down the track at 130, 140 miles an hour, and I really don't want the spoiler trying to come off. These are some plastic spacer bushings that come with mount TV kits. I've always saved these things, like a whole bunch of them. You can see that I've got like a whole container up here of the different spacers. Anyways, I've drilled it out a little bit, and you can see here I've got it to slip over the stud. Remember, this is what that stud looks like. I've got it to slip over the stud such that I could put a washer in one of the included screws to grab the spoiler and pull it to the module, and you can see it actually fits really tight now. I'm going to go ahead and do this on both sides because I don't trust having just the 3M tape here. So once I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and pull it back off again, and then I'm going to 3M tape the 3 pedestals on the spoiler and set the module back on. All right, well, I've got some 3M tape on it. I'm a little sketched out about trying to align it all at once to sit it down, but there's nothing I can do but to do it. So without further ado, let me stick it on there and then see if I screw it up royally. All right, I think I've got it. I've got it taped on. It's sitting pretty darn flush. The center pedestal is a little wonky. I think getting it in the sun for a couple of days will help that settle out. It's hard to see, but it doesn't quite want to sit flush, but these are both very flexible pieces of plastic, and they've been in my cool shop all day now. Let that get hot, and I think that's going to settle. I'll be able to squeeze it and get it to set down. So I've got my bushing here with the screw holding it tight on this one. I've got 1, 2 nuts, and then a bushing and a screw here, and then a bushing and a screw here. So I have positive fixation on all 3 of them, real well in the center here especially. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back in reverse order. Go clean the mounting location on the car because the trunk is filthy, and then we're going to try to put this on. Well, it fits. It's on there. All of these bolts went back like they were supposed to. These are, like I told you, they used to have a bolt here, but they had a stud. I was able to put a washer and then the nut they provide and pull these down really tight too. So the spoiler is really, really well attached. It ain't going nowhere. Let me close that and back away. Ooh. That's huge. That looks fine. Let me put the trunk back together. Just like that, in some movie magic, the trunk is back together. Boom. I've got a spoiler. Big spoiler. I think there were some concerns as to how strong this is and whether or not it would flex. Man, I bet you this spoiler probably can produce 100 pounds or so at speed. There's gonna be some deflection, but I've touched a performance pack spoiler and a Darkhorse spoiler actually, not a handling pack, so no gurney flap, and this is no more or less flexible than that. Gosh, that looks good. I mean, it's not suddenly a Darkhorse, but it looks good. Let me clean the fingerprints off of that, and I'm gonna get some better picture of it. All right, so I got you some good video of it. What is my opinion? Well, it's not perfect. There's a sag in the paint right there, if you can see it. And then there's some bumps in the molding where the screw attachment points are. The paint is not perfect. And like here on the gurney flap, there's a little movement in the center, and this may relax some and not be as pronounced whenever the sun hits it and warms it up, but I might very well end up putting one more screw because there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 here. I'll put one more black screw in the center to support the middle. Other than that, I took the car to Mexico, and in Mexico you can do, let's call it mock Jesus. I did mock Jesus multiple times. and held it there for a while, and there was no weird movement out of the spoiler. There was no flapping, there was no weird bending or anything like that. This thing's on there. It's very solid. So I guess for as cheap as it is, anywhere from $189 to $260, you can't really complain, because the real version of this from Ford is, you know, $1,000 plus paint. So do I recommend? Installation is not for the faint of heart. It's going to require a little creative thinking, at least if you have the thumbnail spoiler like me. I know there's a few guys in the group that have it, and maybe they had cars with track pack spoilers and it was easier. I don't know, but a lot of people have that base model thumb spoiler like I have. It's a little challenging, as you saw, but it can be done. For the price, why not? It doesn't harm the car. You don't have to make any holes bigger. There's nothing stopping you from going back to the thumb spoiler. So sure, why not? Go for it. Anyways, thanks for following on. Y'all pick one of these up on eBay. I've got the link below if you want it. And as usual, we love you. God bless. Peace.